understand what's happening at the Fed, who pay attention to the money printing, to the deficit spending. I mean, the US has only run a budget surplus 4 times in the last 50 years. Ross Perot is an independent candidate in 92. He ran on balancing the budget. He was slamming the panic button and be like, this is crazy. It was in 92. It's before all the printing that happened after. It was before the printing in the crisis, the TARP, and it was before the printing in the last decade, and it was before this. So that was like 30 years ago. He was getting traction because he was worried about what was happening to the US dollar. And it's getting to a point now where, like, how do you get off this track? You know, both parties, there's no hard money party anymore. It's not like the Republicans, the Democrats aren't the same thing when it comes to printing, running debts, and you know, financing government operations. So the question is, like, how does this end? And at some point, the math becomes so impossible, right? I don't know who said compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. You want things compounding for you, your wealth growing overnight and, you know, compounding, but you don't want your debt obligations compounding against you. And that's obviously what's happening. The ability for us to actually service our debt is just going to be, you know, implausible, not believable. And the math just won't work out. And I think that these fiat currency regimes will collapse. I hope they don't. But who's gonna, like, get us off this path that we've been on? Just like Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, just like Jack Dorsey and Square, every company, multinational or whatever, publicly traded, every large company is gonna need their treasury invested in Bitcoin. It will be irresponsible not to. I think central banks are going to do the same thing, sovereign wealth funds. So when you look at the fact that only 2 companies that we know of publicly traded, and we would know because they have to disclose this if there was more, out of all the companies out there, it's so early, right? If every Fortune 500 or 1,000 company does what these 2 just did, a tremendous amount of wealth comes into this space, because Bitcoin and cryptos primarily been a retail phenomenon thus far. It's really been driven by people's personal accounts, not really their hedge fund money, their LP money, but really their personal money. But that's started to change, right? As we mentioned before, with legendary investors like Paul Tudor Jones, Stan Druckenmiller, and now we have companies that are doing this. So the dominoes are, like, starting to fall, and eventually it's going to be a central bank. And some very smart company is going to take a country is going to take a huge position in Bitcoin and talk about it. It'll be as great as the Soros breaking the pound trade. You know, a couple of people take $100 million position in Bitcoin, hedge fund managers, and go talk about it, whether it's a Bill Ackman, Ray Dalio, or anyone who's got a fund. And that, look, our thesis is that Bitcoin 30x's from here, because if it's digital gold, it disrupts gold. Bitcoin's market cap is 300 billions, right? And the 300 billion, gold is 9 trillion. The above ground gold is 9 trillion. So if Bitcoin's market cap is 9 trillion, then each Bitcoin will be worth $500,000. And that's why Michael Saylor just bought 50 more million Bitcoin. People say, oh, is 19 too high? Well, it's not too late. Look at what Michael Saylor just did. He took $50 million in Bitcoin position because he obviously thinks that's going up.
And we think there's a 25, 30x from here on sort of the conservative bull case if Bitcoin were to dethrone gold. But we think it actually has greater promise than that, because a lot of people can't really get access to gold, if you think about it. Whereas really anybody with an internet connection gets access to Bitcoin, and it's more smart devices on the planet than people. So yeah, the access will be there for digital gold. My feeling is if we breach the 20,000, when we breach the $20,000 barrier, it's sort of all bets are off and things start running in a pretty exciting way.